Hello, everyone, and good afternoon to you wherever you are. We are glad to have you today for this first edition of the webinar on African youth partnering, powering the sustainable development goals in Africa. Today, we shall be talking about how you are going to hold the government accountable to their SDG promises. Okay, but before we proceed on today's webinar, we'd love to take a 1 minute silence for the souls that were lost yesterday during at the Ethiopian air crash that happened in Addis Ababa. So we're gonna go on a 1 minute silence to respect the souls that were lost yesterday. So the 1 minute starts now. May their soul rest in perfect peace. Okay, welcome back. As we proceed to the webinar for today, we shall be talking about how to hold your government accountable to their SDG premises. My name is Tamilari Uyedele. I will be co-facilitating this webinar with my partner, who is Futumelo Zwane. She is in South Africa. She works with the Commission for Gender Equality, and I work for Library and You here in Nigeria. Today, we shall be talking about how to hold the government accountable to the SDG premises. And with the way of this webinar, it's going to be happening every quarter. And for this quarter, we'll be looking at how you can hold the government accountable to the SDG premises in your various countries. So now I'm going to hand over to Betumolo Zwane, who shall proceed to the next phase of the webinar for today. Betumolo Zwane, over to you.
Thank you very much, Damilare, and hello to everyone who is joining us from wherever that you are. I'm very much excited to be facilitating this webinar of young us from where and in the presence of our wonderful speakers across Africa. To kickstart our session, firstly, I want to introduce to you our opening speaker who is going to set the scene for us, setting the scene on key issues to tell us why it is important for us to engage in these conversations as young people and to speak on issues of what is the high-level political forum and what are the voluntary national review processes that are taking place at national, regional, and global levels. And you will also be touching on the SDGs and how the Africa Youth SDG Summit contributes to all of this, to the SDGs and to the VNRs. So our opening speaker today is the Executive Director for Youth Advocates Ghana, and he is the convener for the Africa Youth SDGs Summit, Mr. Emmanuel Amitape. I don't know if Mr. Emmanuel is ready because I'm not seeing him coming up on my screen. Yes, there we go. So our opening speaker is the Executive Director for Youth Advocates Ghana, and he is the convener for the Africa Youth SDGs Summit. He is Mr. Emmanuel Amitape. Over to you, Emmanuel. Emmanuel? Emmanuel, are you there? Kindly apologize for not know what is happening. Freya?
Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning. Is this Mr. Emmanuel?
Yes, this is Mr. Emmanuel.
Emmanuel, yes, the floor is yours. I have just introduced you and touched on a little bit of what is it that you will be speaking to us about. So can you please go ahead and open our session for us, sir?
Right. Thank you very much for the introduction, and good morning to everyone from Accra, Ghana. First, let me take the opportunity to thank the organizers of this webinar, and especially to thank Restless Development and the 2030 Youth Alliance, Library and Youth, and all the other partners who are contributing to making this webinar successful. I also want to welcome the participant to this section and to say that it is a privilege for me to be giving these opening remarks for this webinar. Before I proceed, let me take the opportunity to give us a brief background of the SDGs for the sake of who are hearing it for the first time. If you recall, in January 2016, the Sustainable Development Goals came into effect to consolidate the achievements and the gains from the Millennium Development Goals. Now, the SDGs are 17 interconnected goals with 169 targets with 230 global indicators. Now, the SDGs are very ambitious in nature, built around the 5 Ps of developing people and protecting the planet and promoting peace, prosperity, and partnership for all, with the overarching principle of leaving no one behind. Now, if we take the 17 SDGs as we have it, they are very relevant to all countries, especially for countries even in Africa. For Africa being the youngest continent and with the rise in youth population, makes the SDGs a very critical development agenda for Africa. If you look at challenges such as youth unemployment, unintended pregnancy, gender-based violence, quality education, health, and addressing climate change, these are issues that affect young people. And especially also providing the civic space for young people to shape decisions that affect their life. The SDGs provide a very important opportunity for us, not because it affects us, but also it gives us opportunity to shape these decision processes and to make sure that we can make the world a better place. Now, in order to achieve the SDG in 2030, as we know, the SDGs are have 15 lifespan, and so it is important that all hands on deck, we roll our sleeves and make sure that we can implement the SDGs to make the world a better place. And one of the follow-up processes or the review mechanism that the SDG provide is that it encourages member states to conduct regular and inclusive review of progress at the national and the sub-national level, which are country-led and country-driven. Now, these national reviews are expected to serve as a basis for regular reviews by the high-level political forum meeting under the auspices of the Economic and Social Council, as the ECOSOC. So the voluntary national review aims to facilitate the sharing of experiences, including successes, challenges, and lessons learned over the years, with a view of accelerating implementation of the SDGs across countries. Now, the voluntary national review also is important because it helps to strengthen policies and institutions of government and to mobilize multi-stakeholder support and partnership for the implementation of the SDG. And at the same time also to enable citizens and ordinary people to hold government accountable for the promise of the SDGs. Now, each year, government officials from all over the world, ministers of state, members from civil society, and the private sector gather at the United Nations head office in New York to attend the high-level political forum. And this forum allows countries to present their report and to receive feedback on it. Now, the reporting of the high-level political forum started in 2016, and so 2019 it will be the 4th in series that will be taking place. And for this year, the voluntary national review or the high-level political forum will take place from Tuesday 9th July to Thursday 18th July 2019, sorry, with the 3-day ministerial meeting that will also take place from 16th July to 18th July 2019. Now, in terms of countries that will be reporting, this year, 50 countries are expected to report at the high-level political forum, and especially because this webinar is focusing also on empowering young people in Africa, let me briefly mention some of the countries that will be reporting. So we have Algeria, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Republic of Congo, Cote d'Ivoire, South Africa, Ghana, Tunisia, Sierra Leone, Rwanda, Mauritius, Mauritania, and Lesotho. These are countries that have voluntarily offered themselves to report on the progress that they are making in terms of achieving the SDGs in their various countries. Now, also it's important for me also to mention that the 2019 voluntary national review will also be conducted on the theme empowering people and ensuring inclusiveness and equality. This is in line with the principle of leaving no one behind, making sure that the reporting of the SDGs will ensure inclusivity and bring everybody on board for the process. Again, the 2019 report will also focus on 6 goals. So we have goal 4, which talks about inclusive and equitable education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all, where we'll also be looking at goal 8, which is promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment and decent work for all. Then goal 10 will also look at reduce inequality within among nations. Goal 13, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. Then we'll have the goal 16, which is promote peace and inclusive society for sustainable development. Goal 17, which is a constant goal, which is under review each year, will look at strengthening the means of implementation and revitalize the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development. So the 2019 report will focus on these 6 SDG areas. And so if your work is aligned to any of these, then that provides you a very important opportunity to shape the process. Now, let me also mention that beyond the global high-level political forum that will be taking place in New York, there will also be the regional meeting. So we have the UN regional commissions are responsible for organizing 5 regional forums on the SDGs, which directly input into the high-level political forum, which will take place later in New York. Now, the African regional meeting is scheduled to take place in Morocco in April 2019. And so these are some of the important spaces that are emerging that I think that are critical for not only young people, but also for civil society and the general public to shape the process. Now, if we look at the SDGs are giving our government, our development partners, and of course, everyone a unique opportunity to address our development challenges, especially for the youth. And the youth have the same opportunity to play central role in the movement to achieve the SDGs. Why they are affected by the problems that are outlined in the SDGs, they are equally active players in this space. And so it is important that young people, we are aware of this important accountability space, and we are also aware of the processes in which we are able to contribute to shaping the process and making sure that issues that affect us are highlighted in this report. Now, as part of our effort to ensure that we mobilize the human capital on the African continent, especially we mobilize young people across Africa to consolidate our efforts and promote our contributions to the SDG process. Youth Advocate Ghana, the 2030 Youth Alliance, and all our partners, including Restless Development across the world, instituted what we call the African Youth SDG Summit. Now, this is a space for young people to dialogue, to network, to learn, and to celebrate the successes and participation of young people in the SDG processes. Not only the SDGs, but also looking inwardly towards the implementation of the Agenda 2063, which is also a blueprint for Africa's development effort. Now, one of the key milestones from the 2017 summit was the fact that the summit created opportunity, a platform, an environment for young people across Africa to interface with young policymakers, to come together to exchange ideas in terms of how we can champion the participation of young people in the delivery of the SDGs on the continent. Now, as an important space, and the fact that we want to make this space very critical for young people on the continent, we mobilized, or we hosted a 2018 summit, which also mobilized over 1,400 delegates from across Africa, who declared their preparedness to partner with leaders, with government, with society, to implement the SDGs. We also know that the summit is also a foundation and a catalyst for local partnerships with local government, with youth organizations, with the UN system, and African institutions to be able to exchange views, ideas, celebrate, and hold ourselves accountable for the promises that have been made within the SDGs. Now, if you look at the SDGs, we cannot hold our leaders accountable if we ourselves are not informed, if we ourselves are not educated, if we ourselves are not aware of the processes. And but mind you, these processes can be very, very bureaucratic and very technical. And that is why it's important that we can educate ourselves, we can bring young people together, we can create a platform that will enhance knowledge sharing and sharing of experiences. Now, to conclude with my remarks, I was to also mention that the high-level political forum, and for that matter, the national review process of the SDG is an important space. It is important because that is the stage where we are able to know where we are in terms of the implementation, the successes that we have made from the country level. So if you look at this year, for instance, the 6 areas that the SDGs will be, the high-level political forum will be reporting on. If you look at education, you look at employment, if you look at inequality and climate change, these are very critical issues that affect young people. And so it's very also important that we can contribute and shape to our national report. So each country will be preparing a report that will present at this meeting in New York. And so awareness on the process and how to participate is very critical. In most countries, we have the National Development Planning Commissions and the National Youth Authority. These are spaces that you can find information from in terms of where you are or where the country is in terms of the preparation to report. So if I use Ghana as an example, the National Development Planning Commission of Ghana is leading the entire process of conducting consultations across board and generating views and perspective that will feed into the national report. Apart from the National Development Planning Commission, we also have the UN system. We have the National Youth Authority. In some countries, it is called the National Youth Council. And also we have some ministries that are linked to development. They provide important avenues for us to seek information in terms of how the process is unfolding and how they can participate in that. I think it's also important to also make a call to say that our national government must make this process very transparent, open as much as possible, and make it very participatory so that ordinary voices can be heard in this space, and that the report of these countries will reflect the realities on the ground and the things that are affecting young people. It's also important that as government, they are able to include youth delegations on their delegation to New York, for instance, to report on the SDGs, so that we can have the faces or the people fairly represented in those spaces. So it's not just the ministers who are reporting, but we can also have youth voices, perhaps even presenting what we call the youth perspective or youth shadow report, and all those things that can contribute to inclusive development. I think that these are very important space, and as this discussion unfolds, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to agree on some of the things that we can do at country level to ensure that we can promote the voices of youth and the participation in these processes. I thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel Ametepe, for taking us through that introduction part of this webinar, educating us about the high-level political forum and the Vienna process at national, regional, and global level. At this point, we shall proceed to the next phase of the webinar, which is to introduce our wonderful and brilliant speakers, who shall be discussing with us on 3 major questions that we're going to be asking them today. So today we have 3 major questions to be discussed with the speakers, which cut across vibrant youth across Africa who are doing numerous things in the education spaces in their various locations across Africa. First on my list here is Taband. Taband is a research consultant and youth champion for the Citizen Report, and also the Youth Alliance for Leadership Development in Africa, YALDA, and African Monitor. And the second speaker we have today is Aisha Matiko. Aisha Matiko is a youth accountability advocate for Restless development in Tanzania. And also we have Rotimi Olawale. Rotimi Olawale is the executive director of Youth of Africa. And also we have Uzomaka Imbara, who is a program officer for Christian Fellowship and Care Foundation, and also End Water Poverty Coalition. So those are the speakers we have for today. We have 4 of them across African countries from different regions in Africa who have experience and fieldwork experience as far as SDGs and Vienna is concerned in Africa. So over to you, my partner, my co-facilitator, Butumelo Zwane, to take us through the question part.
Thank you very much, Damilare. And to our speakers, welcome, and that you are settled in. On to our that we have prepared for this. Firstly, I want you to share with us. You can take this question if you feel comfortable with it. How do you see your role as a young person or as young people in the process of SDG planning, implementation, review, and follow up at that we have stated being the national global level? How do you, as a young processes of the SDGs? Any one of you can take the question if you're ready.
Hello.
Hello, yes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm Tabang from Yalda and African Monitor. So for me, I believe that for us to be able to achieve the sustainable development goals and actually assist in the implementation and planning of them is for us as the youth to be self-starters. We have to be self-starters, like start on a goal, work on it, and then when we meet up with the government, we can be able to present our ideas to them. We can initiate certain designs and policies that we want to see happening within the government. Like for us from Yalda, we decided to be part of the implementation process. Through us showing interest in it, we decided that we'll be a youth-led organization that will spearhead the whole process. We started first by talking to them and asking the relevant authorities to join the National Steering Committee, which they finally agreed to let us in. And then we have the chairperson of Yalda sitting in the National Steering Committee. So in that way, we have access. You know, sometimes it's very difficult to play a certain role if you don't have access. Now we have access, and the government is really listening to us, because the first time we went to them with initiatives that we had already started. So we had sort of a, what is it called? We had sort of a trademark that we can show them that we did 1, 2, 3, and this is where we want you to back us up.
Yeah. Wow, that's wonderful. That is really wonderful. I think the most important thing that I have picked up, that I've taken from your response, people need to initiate, people need to be organized. And with that having started, they will begin to have a role and they will begin to make an impact. So if I may just check with you, Rotimi. Rotimi, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Yes, you see your role as a young person in this process of SDG planning, implementation, and review.
Thank you very much. My name is Rotimi and I work with Youth of Africa. I think I'll build on the points that Tabang was saying. And I think the first thing is to organize. As young people, we should stop working in isolation and in silos. We should find other young people and youth organizations in our country and in the continent and work together and organize into a formidable front in order to get ourselves involved in the SDG process. And I would also refer to something that Emmanuel mentioned earlier, is that young people also need to understand how does this connect in their individual countries. At the national level, which agencies are responsible? In many countries, it's the National Planning, Ministry of National Planning and the National Planning Commission, and also with your various national youth councils. And so you need to engage with them. You need to understand how this connects and how the SDG process is being implemented and being tracked in your country. And then 3, you need to engage. Young people should stop complaining only on social media, but they need to engage officially. They need to write to those responsible. They need to seek to understand. We should focus less on the travels, but focus more on how do we implement the SDG in our countries, how do we raise awareness amongst our peers, and how do we engage the process meaningfully. Thank you.
That's great. I don't know, Ozumaka, would you like to jump in on that as well? How do you see your role as a young person within this process before we do our next question? Ms. Mbara?
Can I?
Yes, you may.
Oh, hello. I'm Aisha from Tanzania. And as a young person, I see that my role is very crucial and important in implementing the SDGs because these Sustainable Development Goals are an agenda to be implemented by 2030. And as a young person, I belong to the majority population. So it is us who should carry that banner to lead the way to the sustainable development goals. We shouldn't, keep waiting for the government to call upon us. We should take actions. There is no fixed formula to do these things. So like, look around your community, take that challenge as an opportunity and push it forward because whatever I believe these 17 goals focus in everything which surrounds us. So like it is up to yourself to, to make yourself accountable to your community and also know how to make your leaders accountable as well.
Hmm. No, definitely. I mean, as a principle within the SDGs, the principle of not leaving no one behind and the young people being the majority population, I mean, we do have a role to play. I think that is very much clear. Demilare, I think we can move on to our next question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Rose, for going through the first question. The second question is quite very important as African youth looking at the terrain where we live in. Okay, that's the with the challenges we face in our various countries. So what are some of the challenges that you have faced to work with your government on SDG implementation, review, and follow up? And what are some of the solutions to address these challenges that we face as youth working with governments? Mr. Rotimi Olawale, what's your take on this question?
Thank you very much. I think that one of the key challenges that I have noticed over the years is that government many times do not recognize the important contributions that young people bring to the table. And so many times you need to constantly explain and defend as well as lay a solid case for the impact that young people have made, both in the process that led up to the SDG itself and also in the SDG implementation. That's one. The second thing that with working with government is also the agency. If young people are not organized, this is one of the things that many government agencies have complained in the past, that they get all kinds of youth networks and youth groups approaching them with same requests, and so they are unsure of what group exactly to work with, and that's when you see in some countries that the National Youth Council or the National Youth Authorities are not well organized to coordinate this process as they should have done. And so that also becomes a major challenge that happens. Number three is also about insufficient financial resources. Government do not feel that it's important that they include youth as delegates to important policy process like the high-level political forum that is coming in July. So when they do their budgeting, they prioritize other sectoral groups and do not include youth as part of this process. And that's why, as young people, we need to organize and we need to find creative ways that we can overcome these highlighted challenges.
Wow, thank you so much, Rotimi. These are quite specific problems you've highlighted. And I would love you to also proceed and let us know some of the solutions to such challenges that are now we can solve these problems in Africa.
I think that one of the things that young people also need to do is to gain some traction and recognition to the work that we do. One is also by doing shadow reports. How can we present the work that young people have done in our countries and on the continent collectively? I'm very particular about us working together. So it's not just pushing what, for instance, Yalda has done or what Youth of Africa has done or what the process Emmanuel is leading from Ghana. But how can we put on a united front? How can we work together in our countries? How can we work together on the continent to showcase the work that we do? And we also need to be able to find other sources outside of government to provide the required resources. The UN system in countries is one of such sources that can provide the required resources for young people to be at the seat when such high-level political forums are going on. And like we have said, leaving no one behind. For those of us who have been part of several processes, we should also be able to look back and provide the needed mentorship for younger people who are coming into the field, and also to share our experience like we're doing through this webinar, so that we can support other young people who are new to the field and who want to follow the steps that we have created in the past. I know people like Emmanuel have lots of experience in this field, and we should continue to create avenues like this so that we can provide mentorship for people to understand the process and take advantage of the experience that has been built over the years.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much, Rotimi. Aisha Matiko, you are a youth advocate, accountability advocate in your country. So what will be your take on this question?
We share most of the challenges, but I'll add some, like there is also political propagandas, which I appreciate the work my government has been doing, and I understand there is so much on this, but at times there are unnecessary delays and wrongs when needing a hand of the government. And these delays, they slow down our work because we might be needing something which is urgent. We might be needing a permit, for example, but it might take time to get that. So these delays slow down our work. And another challenge is the contradiction between the policies and the laws. I'm working on ensuring that young people have access to sexual reproductive health, for example. And doing that, I have to make sure that young people, 15 to 35 years old, all have access to sexual reproductive health rights. But the health policies allows me to do my work, but the education policy doesn't allow me because it says like no student shall be taught about sexual reproductive health rights. But most young people, adults and adolescents, at school, and so they're not accessing the information, and the right to sexual reproductive health means that they will only run to unwanted pregnancies and increase the rate of school dropouts. So this contradiction between policies is also a challenge for us doing our yeah.
Aisha, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your response. You've made quite a lot of great feedback based on the question. But I also want to go further to ask you the problems you've highlighted. What are the possible solutions to these problems in your country?
In this political propaganda, I just think like the government has to be more transparent. We're working on achieving the same thing. So like the government needs to be more transparent to private sectors and people like us who want to make a world a better place.
Well, I
And
quite agree with your point that transparency and accountability is quite very important
yeah.
in this aspect. So, Tabang, what do you have to say on this question?
Okay, I'd say some of the challenges that the youth face is lack of access. We don't really have access to relevant stakeholders who can help us in delivering the work that we want to do. But what I ask is that the government has really been coming through for us, because in 2017, we had one of our members going with some of the representatives from the government to New York, where they did a youth shadow report of the SDGs at the high-level political forum. So I believe that it is important that as the youth, we should try as much as possible to push until we see a vision that we have being accomplished. And then, like, we also realize that there's lack of resources in terms of, we would go and talk to maybe United Nations. They would tell us that we can help you in some way, but we won't be able to fund a project that you are doing. What we did was we looked for international sponsors. That's where African in. They were doing a project first on Voice Africa's Future, which was mainly on raising awareness on the SDGs among the youth. So we championed that project, and then we really did a good job. That's what we did. We maximized on the opportunity that they gave us and the funds that came through. So then following year, they gave us another project, the Citizen Report project, that we are helping to do. And it is a very good project for us because now we can be able to engage with governments, because what we have realized is that there's lack of data. There's no data available really in Botswana about sustainable development goals. The government hasn't really been doing a lot of awareness. So I would say we are the foot soldiers for that. We go around communities, even the marginalized communities. We talk to them. We teach them about the SDGs. So
thank you so much.
in
Thank
order
you so much,
to
Taban, for your comprehensive explanation of the challenges you face in your country, which also resonate with us in other African countries. And our speakers, thank you so much for giving us a comprehensive insight into what you face in your country, looking at the unorganized nature of the youth and the need for us to be well organized, and the need for us to talk about the story of our impact in our various countries, and also the need for us to have our resources to be able to push the process. And also, most importantly, the need for government to be accountable and transparent in their dealings with us in this particular aspect of the SDGs and VNRs. Okay, at this point now we proceed to the next question. Over to you, Busimelo Zwane, to facilitate this session.
Thank you very much, Temilore. Oh, it has been very, exciting, but it's concerning amount or them are coming across, in good work that they make social challenges, political infrastructure that they're going through. But we don't lose hope and we continue soldiering on the work. But to our speakers, and we have not heard anything from Ms. Mbara Ozuamaka. If she's still there, please share with us what would be of advice to our webinar participants who want to get more involved in youth-led accountability. What steps could they take once this webinar is finished? Because when we leave here, they need to go back and start working. What could be their point of departure? What is that piece of advice that you can give them to say, from today, this is your starting point, this is... If Ms. Mbara is not there, any one of the speakers can jump onto this question, please.
Okay. I would advise them to just take action. As I said, there isn't a fixed formula on doing these things. So it's just a matter of identifying the challenge and taking an opportunity from it. As long as you're a young person, you've got it all. So you just have to trust yourself and it can take you further. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Just take action. Aisha?
Yes?
Yes. What would be your main piece of advice to our young people who are joining us in the webinar today to say, from this webinar, after this webinar, what do you think should be their point of departure? What should they go back and do?
I just told them to take action, but the point is identifying that challenge. That's the point. I mean, that's the starting point. Yeah.
That's great, because with the Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17, and each one of them is trying to address a particular issue. So it is very much important as young people to go into our communities or within our country, identify what the problem is, identify what the challenge is, because we cannot solve what we don't know is the problem. Mr. Rotimi, what would be the main piece of advice for our young participants?
Well, I think that my advice would be two-front. One is to go back to your countries and find out how can you engage the official national processes of the SDGs in country. Number two is also we need to continually raise awareness of the SDGs. And as young people, we need to find creative ways to do this using technology, using peer-to-peer networking and ensuring that we not only reach out to young people in urban areas, but also in rural areas, and find creative ways that their voice can be heard and that they can also join in implementing the SDGs. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Demilare, I think we can open some questions to our participants.
Yeah, for sure. For sure we can. We now have floors for our participants to ask us questions. Please kindly drop your question in the chat box on this webinar YouTube channel. And we have a question already from one of the participants, okay? And I'd love to get response from our speakers, okay? One of the questions we have from one of our participants is that what can young people do if the government doesn't give young people real platforms to speak out? Okay, what can they do if they're not given the opportunity of a platform to speak out their voice concerning the SDGs in the various countries? So I want to get a response from our speakers.
I think that what we then need to do is to create alternative platforms by ourselves. As young people, you continue to push government to get platforms, but if such platforms do not exist, then we need to create a platform. And I must give kudos to Emmanuel from Ghana, who has created the African Youth SDG Summit. I think it's now in its second or third edition. And that platform has now continuously attracted support from across the continent and even beyond in terms of recognizing what young people can do in self-organizing to contribute to the SDGs. So if such platforms do not exist, then we need to create platforms on ourselves and use what young people these days are best known for, social media, to amplify their own voices.
Great, great. We have to create platforms for ourselves. So Tabang, what would be your take on this question?
Okay, my take would be that we should try to make SDGs interesting. Like, for example, we can use music to convey our messages. We can use art in order to try and capture like the government. In the long run, they would find a way that they can assist. And also we can do peaceful protest. Let's say we have a report that we want to present to them, but they don't want to listen. We can just do a peaceful protest, and in a way we are raising awareness and demanding them to take action.
Okay, great, great. Mr. Emmanuel Ametepe, I'm sure you want to share some experience on this particular question. Please go ahead.
Right. Thank you very much. I think it's an important question. And for me, one of the things that we can do is to make our voices very relevant. As Ratimo said earlier on, government are people that are often want to sideline young people and youth organizations. And so in order for us to be very attractive to policymaker, to government, we have to be very relevant. Relevant in the sense that whatever we are doing, we make sure we do the right thing and we do to the best of our ability. So if we take the African Youth SDG Summit, for instance, in 2017 when we started, there was very little interest from government, from stakeholders, even from the UN system to believe that this idea can evolve to become a credible space for young people. But what we did was that we told ourselves we want to make sure everything we do, we do it with evidence. We have our own research team, and we are able to compose our messages a way that will be compelling to government and to people to listen to us. So we have to use those structures. Another thing that we need to do is also to build alliances and coalitions, because our numbers can speak volume for us. I'm sure that if any government will not want to listen, if you can mobilize 1,000, 2,000 people, they will be forced to listen to you. And we can be able to mobilize that if we build alliances and coalition with other organizations that are doing similar things. So I think that these are some of the things that we can do to really make a case for the government to listen to us.
Wow, well, thank you so much for sharing to us your experience, Mr. Manu Ametepe. Okay, we have another question here from one of our participants. He is asking that, are there any tips on how to communicate effectively to government? Okay, Mr. Rotimolale, what's your take on this question?
Is that on how to communicate effectively to government?
Yes.
Well, I think that in terms of communication is that we need to ask ourselves what is our one of the things that we always say to people is the elevator pitch. Many times you will not get access to government officials in their offices. And so you will meet them at corridors, at conferences, and how are you able to articulate what your demands and your message are in 1 minute? So cut out from the jargon, focus on your main message, and ensure that you deliver it in creative ways. And we've also seen young people also target government officials on social media, do letter writing campaigns, do petitioning. These are things that can get you attention and get your message across to the relevant organizations and government agencies.
Okay, great. Aisha Matiko, what do you think about this question?
I was going to add on the social media, especially Twitter. Twitter is the media which is mostly used by government officials and decision makers. So you just have to make your tweets like in a way like it will attract the right person you're targeting. It is also a way of communication.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And Mr. Emmanuel Ametepe, I'm sure when you were working on the African SDG Summit, you should be able to share some tips you used to communicating effectively to government officials in your country. I would like to get your response on this question.
I think that in addition to what have been said already, we also want to utilize the power of article writing, where article writing is a very powerful tool that you can use to convey whatever message, and also video messaging. These are some of the tools that you want to use. But beyond that, you can utilize other structures that we have. For example, if you are trying to get into things that you cannot access, you can call on any of your partners who have access to that office, that can introduce you to the right person or can introduce you to wherever you want to speak to. So it is important to utilize our own networks, our own partners and collaborators, so that together we can carry along and make sure that whatever message you want to send across can get to the right person.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing with us that wonderful experience. Those are the questions we have from our participants. However, we now have Uzomaka with us now. We'd love to get your reflections on few of the questions which Elia talked about. So we want to get your reflections on the last question that we had, which was asked, what would be your main piece of advice to webinar participants who want to get more involved in SDG activities and accountability in the various countries, and what steps could they take once this webinar finishes? Uzomaka, please go ahead and give us the response to this third question. Uzomaka, are you there? Okay, I think we lost that. Then we have to proceed to the next phase of the webinar. Thank you so much. We've been able to go through quite a lot of questions, and I believe we've got some responses to which we are going to go back in our various countries to make sure we implement this process, to network with other youth-led CSs in our various countries to see how we can use various mediums to communicate what we do to relevant government agencies in our various countries, and how we can get resources to implement our activities, and majorly make sure that our activities that we implement in our various countries are impact-driven activities. At this point now, we will proceed to the next stage to which my facilitator, Utimelo Zwane, will take it up from here. Utimelo Zwane, over to you. Okay, great. I think we have challenges for Utimelo Zwane to reach us. I think the next thing for us now is to introduce to you an SDG Power Park designed by Restless Development. It has been designed for you to be able to understand how you can practically, as young people, be part of the view.
Yeah, and thank you very much and to our participants. And don't take all the.
Go ahead, please.
Great, thanks Damilari, and hi everyone. I'm really excited to be joining this webinar. My name is Freya Seath and I'm the Global Advocacy Manager with Restless Development. And I just very briefly wanted to spend a couple of minutes introducing this resource to you, in case it could be something that's useful for those of you that are listening and who are interested to get more involved in influencing your government's voluntary national review or being involved in the high-level political forum. So you can see on the screen the name of this resource. It's called Youth Power, Powering the Voluntary National Reviews. And it's something that Restless Development and our partners created last year. It's meant to be a practical guide that captures a series of key insights from young people for young people who want to influence their country's voluntary national reviews and get more active in accountability processes around the sustainable development goals. So this handbook basically includes recommendations from a number of global youth leaders from around the world, sharing information on different influencing opportunities for young people that take place at national and global levels, particularly towards processes around the high-level political forum. So this builds on some of the information that Emmanuel was introducing at the beginning of the webinar and some of those background information he shared on key processes. This resource helps you to navigate some of those processes and come up with some strategies for how to get more involved, how to mobilize other young people to really influence and engage with your governments on key discussions around SDG implementation, monitoring and follow-up. So that was what I wanted to say really. You can see here on the slide that there is a link to where you can download this resource online. But if you would like more information or if you would like me to send you a direct link to this resource, please do contact me. And my email is going to be on the next slide. So you'll be able to see my email address. Please do reach out to me and I'm happy to share this resource directly with you or any further information that you might be interested in terms of getting more involved in influencing your government's voluntary national review, be that this year or for the coming years. So yeah, that was all I wanted to share. Thanks so much, Damilari and Rose. Back to you guys.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Freya, for that introduction about these resources that will be able to guide and help youth in Africa to monitor the process of the VNRs in their various countries. Okay, thank you so much for being part of the webinar. Thank you so much for your time, and we're glad to have you this month. And we believe that you've been able to understand and learn quite a lot of things on how you can be part of the SDG process in your country, and majorly for us to work more on the progress plan to implement what we've been taught today in this webinar. Okay, and do endeavor to reach out to us on the chat box of this webinar page. You can send us your comments and other questions, and we're going to respond to you as soon as possible. And also, we'd love to follow up with you for this webinar. As I've said earlier, this is going to be a quarterly held webinar. This is the one for this first quarter, and we're going to have another one for next quarter very soon. So we'd like to keep in touch with you to get your feedback on this webinar. Please do endeavor to give us a feedback on the chat box. And also, if you can send us your email for follow-up on you for subsequent webinar updates that we're going to be having, okay? And we are glad you were part of this webinar, and we believe that you've learned one or two things as regards how you can hold your government accountable to the SDG promises. And also, thank you so much to our speakers who have taken time to be part of this webinar. Thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel Metepe. Thank you so much, Christine Olawale, Subank, Uzwamaka, and Aisha Matik. We so much appreciate you for taking our time to come today. And also, a very big thank you to our various partners who has made this webinar a reality. First shout out goes to Restless Development, Edwater Poverty, Alliance 2030, Library and You, African Monitor, African Youth SDG Summit, Youth Advocates Ghana, and Youth of Africa. Thank you so much for taking our time to come today to educate African youth across the board about the SDGs and how they can be part of the PNR process. And we believe that the next time we're going to have this webinar, we'll all be here to be part of this process to continue to educate African youth about the SDGs and how they can be part of this process in their country, and majorly, and how we can track and implement what we've been taught today in this webinar. So thank you so much, everybody. We so much appreciate your time. We so much thank you for being here today for this webinar. So thank you so much. And to that, we come to the end of this webinar. And thank you so much for participating. We hope to see you next time for the next quarter webinar that is coming up in a few weeks' time. Thank you so much.